I'm big on next steps, like take a step. There's something out there that they need to go to the next level. I was thinking about it this morning while I'm driving in my truck. It's dark out still, and some people are laying in bed. Some people are being lazy. Some people aren't giving it 100%. And for me, it's always everybody I see that wants to do what I do or wants to do what you do, like they have to take the very first step. And then it has to just continue every day. If you're taking a step every day towards what you want, and it has to be what you want. Your why has to be so big that you get up at 5 a.m. and you work till 11 o'clock at night because you're hungry, you want it, you know why you're doing it, and you just got to take that step every day.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's built several businesses to 7- and 8-figure companies, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with patents and trademarks. And today we have another great guest on the podcast, Paul Tompkins. And Paul, just to give you a quick bio, so he started his entrepreneurship journey is 11 or 12 years old. I almost said 11, but 12 years old. And he'll get into that. It kind of reminded me when he talks about it a little bit of the Tom Sawyer and some of his journey. But then he went into the Marine Corps at 18, was conflicted with wanting to be an entrepreneur, also wanting to serve his country. Did that for a bit of time, did some state troopers, decided to make a bit of an adjustment, chase his entrepreneurial dream, and went into flipping homes while being a state trooper. And that's led him to where he's at today. So with that, welcome onto the podcast, Paul.
Hey, Devin, thank you so much for being here, man. I love talking with you. I love your energy, man. Great show.
All right. Well, I gave a very brief introduction, which I'm sure doesn't do anywhere near justice. So maybe with that, why don't you jump into your journey and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, like you said, man, I started young, not just because I wanted to, but necessity. You know, my parents, there was 8 kids in our family. So growing up, my dad was a pastor of a small Baptist church, you know, like 20 people. So there's really no money in that. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, obviously with 8 kids. So yeah, when I was like 12 years old, I just remember there always being like something on my mom's face when I'd see her sit down to pay bills. And she didn't do it in front of us a lot, but like if I stayed up late, if I saw her doing it, like I could just tell there was something worrisome about her. And, you know, I just was wondering, like, how can I help my mom? How can I help pay the bills? And she never asked for money. She never complained about bills. I never heard about it. I just knew something wasn't right. And one day I went to her, I said, hey, listen, I want to help out. What can I do to help? And she's like, you know, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. You're too young for a paper route. You can't drive yet, you know. And I just knew there was a way. So me and my brother just teamed up and we're like, hey, what can we do that we can ride our bikes to, or we can walk? Back then, you know, you could get away with that. Now it's a little bit more dangerous, but we put our heads together and we say, hey, let's start a company, which I don't know what 12-year-old says that. I don't know. I must not have slept the night before. And it was just like, we knew we needed to pitch in, and we said, hey, okay, what can we do? And I just remember us brainstorming. We had bunk beds in our room, and I remember us just sitting there and just like had our GI Joes and, okay, what can I do? And then we're just playing back and forth. And we're like, hey, we can paint some fences. Like we can rake some people's yards and we can shovel snow in the winter. Like, man, we can do stuff in the summer and the winter, mow grass. And we put our heads together and we went to my mom. We're like, hey, listen, we want to help out and we want to do this. We don't know how much to charge. Can we borrow dad's lawnmower? Can we use the shovels in the winter? Like we're already bartering to get what we want. But she loved it. Big old smile on her face. We cut an 8.5, 11 sheet in half, and we wrote Tompkins Helpers, our last name. And we just like drew things underneath it, like shovel, snow, paint, like we never painted before in our lives, and just made a list and we handed them out in our neighborhood. Saved money by cutting it in half, you know, did a little flyer instead of a full sheet. I mean, we were very innovative at 12 years old, but I remember the phone rang. We got our first job. The lady wanted us to come quote a fence to paint. And we're like, what's a quote? You know, like we didn't have a clue, but it was a gracious older lady. Yeah. I was like, yeah, we're on the way. Where are you at? And we just rode our bikes over there, but she was a gracious old lady. And, she's like, she saw us struggling. She's like, how about I just buy the paint and the paint brushes and you guys just paint it? I'm like, thank you. Cause I don't even know how much paint cost. So yeah, at a young age, man, I had the need number one, I think to serve people. It was kind of always in my DNA. It was always in my family. We were always helping people. If people didn't have money, my family would cook meals and stuff like that, even if we didn't have enough. But I saw my parents do it from a young age, where you don't have any money and you're providing Christmas for 8 kids. Like, to this day, I'm like, what happened? How did money like multiply or something? But,
Mm.
and we just had that instilled in us. And growing up, like you said, I joined the Marine Corps at 18.
So
I said, hey,
before you jump into the Marine Corps,
okay, yeah.
I made a reference to Tom Sawyer, and it was interesting, and I can't remember. I'll have to go back because there's been another episode that was someone had a similar story that they were also doing, like they were pulling like a lawnmower behind their bike. And first of all, I asked how you pull a lawnmower behind a bike, and you'll have to listen to. I can't remember. I think the episode's already been recorded and it'll be airing in a while. But it kind of gave me the same thing. So it's kind of this Tom Sawyer. So Tom Sawyer, I don't know. Did you ever read that as a kid, that book?
Yeah.
So you have Tom Sawyer, and the book starts out, and he has basically, I think he did something wrong or he got in trouble, so he had to go paint the fence, right? And so, excuse me, so he has to go paint the fence, but then he gets all of his friends who are saying, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm having a great time. I'm painting the fence. This is awesome. And then they say, well, I want to get in on this. This sounds like fun. So then he gets his friends, well, I'm not going to let you do this for free. You're going to have to pay me if you want to have this fun. And he gets all of his friends to go paint the fence, paying him for it as he gets to go play. So that's where I think next time you do your fence painting business, or your kids start doing it, you'll have to have them read Tom Sawyer first.
I love it. I mean, they're making even more money. That's the way to do it.
So now now jumping to the rest of your story. So you did that, started out as a young kid, but entrepreneur almost by necessity, but then you go into the Marine Corps at 18 and picking up.
I did all kinds of jobs up till the time I was 18. I mean, I remember doing newspaper routes at 4 a.m. I mean, I remember going out and working for a local farmer picking corn. I'm like, isn't there a machine for this? Like, hand picking corn? Like, you're ridiculous, right? Didn't know, so I did it. And then, I got closer to 17, 18 years old. And when I turned 18, I was like, hey, I want to serve at another level, a bigger level. And I wanted to be a police officer, and I couldn't be. I found out, it broke my heart. And they're like, you can't even buy ammo. You're too young. You can't do this at 18. And I'm like, for real?
So I've
been waiting.
Just out of curiosity, what is the age cutoff to be a police
21. Yeah. And every state's different. Every county's different. I wanted to be a state trooper in Florida, and their age was 21. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do for 3 years? Like, I had this plan since I was 16, and I just said, okay, what can I do? And my brother was in the Navy, and I saw his white uniform, not the cool one, the one with the little round hat. And he came home. I made fun of him a little bit, and I said, man, I just can't wear that uniform. I could go in the military. I just can't wear that uniform. And I didn't know what he did for a living. He was in nuclear subs, and I was young. I didn't know. I was just making fun of him. And then when I became a Marine, I was like, oh, okay, we don't mess with you or Navy corpsmen, because you destroy stuff. Corpsmen save our lives. Got it. Love the Navy. But I said, I got to go into the hardest thing. If I'm going to go in for 4 years, I got to get in the hardest thing. And it was the Marine Corps. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I did that for 4 years. I loved it. I was overseas 2.5, 3 years out of the 4 years. And again, I'm like you said, I was struggling with that. I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, in the Marine Corps, they tell you when to go to the bathroom, when to eat, where you're going, when you're going to sleep, what time you're waking up, what time you're working out. And I'm like, man, this is cool. But like, so after 4 years, I'm like, all right, I'm out, and enjoyed it thoroughly. And then went in to be a Florida State Trooper, and did that for 10 years. Loved it. And then 6, 7 years in, I started kind of getting bored, which is crazy because I worked the north side of Jacksonville, which is heavy crime. I mean, I was in foot chases, car chases every day. I mean, I was in the jail sometimes twice a day.
I'm going to dive in just because
do it.
First, so just complete aside from your journey, but what was the craziest, or what was the craziest call you did, or what was the craziest thing you had to respond to?
Oh my gosh. I think for me, I arrested everybody, I feel like, but we get a call one day where there's a guy on the interstate, and we have what's called road rangers down here, where they're like in the inner city. And if you break down, they have these little trucks, State Farm pulls behind you and they help you. And we get a call, meeting lunch, and they're like, hey, there's a guy up on the interstate and he's arguing with one of these guys that are trying to help him. But this guy's like no vehicle or anything. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I keep eating my meal. I'm like, okay, I'll get up there. It's not an emergency call or anything.
Mm.
And then a few seconds later, they put an alert tone over the radio and they're like, hey, he's got a knife. He's in the interstate. He's swinging at a couple of contractors. I guess a couple of construction workers were right up the road, and they were diving in to help him. And this guy was on PCP, so he's butt naked. And I'm telling you, he's fighting three guys. Like, he's smaller than me, and he's whooping these guys, big old construction workers, just
Really?
at PCP.
Huh.
So we're halfway up there already. Light sirens. I have a guy backing me up. And sure enough, he's in the middle of the road, just naked and just swinging a knife. And we had to tackle him. And I mean, it was Florida heat. It's 100 degrees. And then the asphalt's probably 160, 170. And we're all laying on it, wrestling, fighting, and some naked dude. So I don't know. That one always sticks with me. I don't know.
So, and just as another complete aside, it's a complete tangent to wrap up.
No, go.
I'll give you my story, which is nothing even close. I didn't do the Marines. I didn't do the state control. And I come from a small town in Utah. And I still live there today. And, everybody waves at the police officers. We're all grateful.
Yeah.
If you have we have one freeway that kind of goes, through it. And if you have a high speed chase, that's the excitement of the year or the decade type of a thing. So not a lot happens. But then when I went to law school and to MBA school, I went out to Cleveland, Ohio, which is much different than what would be a small town in Utah. And so I remember me and my wife, we were poor, we were in school, and we love movies, and we still do. We love to go to movies. And sad that right now I can't go see a lot of movies, but I love movies. And so we would always go to the Dollar Theater, and we lived in a decent part of town. But to get to the Dollar Theater, you had to go through the worst part of town, so to speak. So you'd always kind of just go through as quick as you can. And I remember coming back, and we were coming back from the Dollar Theater at night, and I don't think we had our kids yet. I think it was just me and my wife. And all of a sudden we were stopped at a stoplight, and there was a big like black SUV and then a car in front. And all of a sudden we're at the stoplight, and four guys, full SWAT gear, jump out of the car and start pulling people out of the vehicle right in front of us. And so we're like, okay, we better hurry, go around. We don't want to stay here too long. So that's the only exciting story that I have that even begins to compare to your story. So, all right, we've had enough of a tangent. Going back to your journey, so now you're getting bored because wrestling people on the asphalt that are high on PCP isn't enough. But so then you said, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. So how did you kind of start to make that transition?
Yeah, so while I was a state trooper, I started digging into like, hey, where do most millionaires and billionaires, or where do I want to go? Where do they invest their money? And real estate just kept popping up. Like, that was always a stream for them, not their full thing, but hey, in their streams, it's real estate, and it always intrigued me. I loved real estate. It was tangible. I saw people lose money in stock markets and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, it seems so risky. I don't control it. Somebody else does. The market's like, so I saw them doing that. And I said, hey, listen, like I can do that. And I met up with a local guy who was doing real estate. And I was like, hey man, I want this guy to coach me, so to speak. There wasn't online courses back then. YouTube wasn't, I don't even think, around. So there's really no way to learn unless you knew somebody or went to a big conference. And conferences weren't even that big. So I saw a local guy in town. He was doing it in Jacksonville and driving a nice Mercedes, lived on the water, had a beautiful boat. And I'm like, those things don't mean that much to me, but it's proof of concept in my opinion. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
He's doing okay.
Or at least he's living out a lot of debt, but he looks like he's doing okay.
Exactly. So I ended up pulling up to his office one day. I'm in my trooper uniform, and I figured I might as well use it to my advantage. You know what I'm saying? So I walked in. He's like, I'm like, hey, I got you where I need you. Like, so I was like, hey man, I want you to coach me. I'm willing to clean the toilets, clean the office, file paperwork, whatever. I want to learn what you're doing. And he refused me a couple times. I had to pull him over a couple times. No, I didn't pull him over a couple times. I'll get in trouble if I say that anyway. But he finally agreed. Yeah. If any troopers are listening, that was not really true. Finally, he admitted it. He said, yeah, I'll do it. So I did it for a year with him, and then he flipped me my first deal, and I was hooked. I was making $36,600 as a trooper. I did that in my first deal in 3 months. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something way wrong here. And I wanted another stream. I needed something else because I was, I had to work probably 16 hours a week of overtime to make 50 grand. And I'm like, South, we don't get paid that much, law enforcement, teachers, all that. So I was just like, there's gotta be, I'm putting my life at risk. I'm working a ton of hours. I'm working different shift work every month. There's gotta be something better. And real estate just turned out to be that vehicle for me. And I started doing deal after deal, and one deal turned into 2 deals. And I said, okay, I sold 2, let me buy 3. And then 3 turned into 6. And then within 2 years, I was doing 8, 10 deals a year and making $40,000 to $50,000 per deal. So I'm clearing $300,000 part-time while I'm still a full-time trooper. And I'm like, I got to get out of this. Like, I just need to go real estate full-time. And my coach is like, hey, just give it a little bit more time. Like, I want you to see every season. I want you to have all these hurdles now while you still have a job. But, when it's time to pull the trigger, you'll know. And then 08 hit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I saw all that happen, which to me, I'm so glad it happened for me, because I learned so much in that I'm not doing now, in ways I'm moving money and doing different things. But 2008 taught me a lot. And I think I had, 12 houses going at a time at that point. And when the bank's saying, hey, I want my money, and houses aren't buying and selling like they used to, you got to figure it out real quick. So that was an experience for me.
So you did that, because that's a lot, and not imputing it on you at all, so don't take it that way.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of late night, hey, you want to be rich quick, you can flip houses, and everybody, and bank will pay your notes, and you won't have to put down a dime. And and I'm making it up because those are the type of things you've seen. It sounds, obviously, you went through 2008, 2009, and it's not that way. And it's not just, hey, one day I'm going to wake up, I'm going to know exactly what I can do. I just watch it or order a 2-hour course online, and I'll be an expert. So, how do people that want, and kind of an aside, but this is an interesting question, people that want to get into house flipping, but they, I don't think that those or it's likely that you can learn everything and you need to know in a 2-hour course, and you're not going to be successful at it. And you're probably going to, contrary to all the TV shows and everything else, you're probably going to lose your shirt at it. So what if people are saying, I want to get into this, how do you get into it? Or what is 30 seconds, where do you start at?
Yeah, for me, there wasn't all that stuff out there that you can get now. There's a lot of trainings out there that you can, go through their training. You can meet them in person. You can get coaching one-on-one. There's so many different avenues right now. So it's not like you're by yourself. You buy a course, you sit there, and you don't really have all the answers. We created a course that we actually turned into a membership because we got tired of those same stories, right? We'd go do a speaking gig, and afterwards there's 30 people in a line, and half of them were great stories where they had education. They had a local coach in their community helping them. They had this. And then the other half were, I just didn't know what I was doing. I saw HGTV. I thought I can do it in 2 weeks. I didn't realize I had to pay closing costs. I didn't realize my contractor might take off with my money if I don't stage it and do draws the right way. So I think, to answer your question, if somebody's going to do it, it's never get rich quick. It's not. I mean, I've been in real estate year after year after year, and I take even my fix and flip money and roll them into rentals to where that's long-term wealth, and I'm paying them off and they're appreciating. So yes, you make that quick money in flips, but you need to roll that into something that's a longer longevity. So just training, man. Devin, just train. It's basically, it never ends. I know when I was a state trooper, you go through basic, but then you still had training you have to do every month because things change, right? New technologies came out, new laws came out. Okay, troopers, this new law came out. We're enforcing it this way, this way, this way. Well, it's the same with anything. Same in real estate, same with being an attorney. Things change, and you have to keep changing and pivoting with it.
No, I think that makes complete sense. So you get that training, you go through flipping, and you say, hey, I'm going. So I want to go full time, and then your mentor saying, not quite yet. Learn a little bit more. Thank goodness type of thing. Go through 2008, 2009, 2010, whenever it stopped.
Yeah.
And then starts to open back up. Then when did you decide to go full time? Was it after things started to pick back up as you started to do it? Did you give it a bit more time, or how did you make that decision to leave the state troopers and go full time?
Yeah, I went through 2008, and like I said, I probably had 12 properties going.
Mm.
and it was hard to do something with them. Well, each mortgage was about $1,000 a month. So think about, that's 12 grand a month I have to come up with. I'm a state trooper. I make 36 grand a year. Like, how am I going to come up with 12 grand? So I'm like freaking out. I'm trying to figure it out. What am I going to do? Unfortunately, I had notes on everything. You know, I didn't have anything paid off. I wasn't that smart at that point. And I just looked for an avenue. I'm like, I don't want to do foreclosures. I don't want to, do deed in lieu of foreclosures. I want to do it the right way. How do I do it? And I had an opportunity come up where I was able to go to Afghanistan as a contractor, and it saved my butt. I was a police officer. I was prior military. They got me right in. I did 25 months in Afghanistan, straight, 2.5 tours. And like the money they paid me was exactly 12,000 something a month. It was crazy. And I just did it right. I paid my notes. I sold them off as I could sell them off. When stuff started coming around, I dumped them when I could dump them. And when I got back, I got injured over there. And when I got back, I was like, hey, I have to take some time because my injury and all that, my spine was messed up. And I said, hey, what am I going to do next? And I ended up meeting my new wife, my amazing wife that does this with me. And here's where it gets crazy. Like we've had a passion for helping kids and people. And the church we were going to was like, hey, we want to launch a center for kids. They had like 800-900 kids every single week that would meet, and they wanted to get them out for summer camps. And in Jacksonville, there's so many big churches like that. So my wife and I were like, hey, let's put something together for these churches to get their kids out to. It's got to be outside of town. There's got to be a drive, and it needs to be big. So we put a deal together, $6 million deal, 562 acres. It slept 185 people. And we put the whole deal together, did the contracts, put it under contract, ended up helping them buy it. And they're like, hey, can you go launch this? And we'll do some other stuff. We'll do some weddings on the side to make some extra cash for, pay the notes down. And we'll do this and do that. We're like, yeah, 100%. So we move out there, we help them launch it. We're in it for a year, and it's like 90 hours a week. I mean, they were loading up. MTV did a wedding out. I mean, it was like a big deal. And I'm like, I can't do this with me, my wife, and 2 full-time employees. Like I'm running 200 people on a weekend. Like I can't sustain this. And it started to go a different direction, and we knew it was going a different direction. So we were kind of like keeping our eyes open. They're like, no, you have a job. Even when we transition it to this new thing, you're good. And then one day the CEO shows up and says, hey guys, we're going a different direction. We no longer need your services anymore. And it was a punch. Like, I mean, I don't know why I handled it so well. My wife was crying, like, and he's asking me questions, and I'm like telling him how to like move forward on different stuff. Like, I don't even know why, because that's not like my DNA. If you know anything about troopers or Marines, it's not be calm and, we get angry. But yeah, I just remained calm. I answered some questions and stuff. And I think I was relieved because it was 90 hours a week, and it shifted from serving and helping people to more of let's make some money so we can pay the notes. And I didn't like that. But in the drop of a hat.
I think you mentioned when you did that, you moved out to do, you moved your house, you moved your family, you moved out to do that. And you were only out there for what, a little over a year. And then you guys got it set up, and then basically new management came in and fired you guys all. So you're looking and saying, we just uprooted everything. Now what do we do? And so I think you mentioned you took 30 days, kind of pondered, thought what you could do, figured it out, and you decided to go real estate full time. Is that about right?
Yeah. We couldn't move back home. We didn't have jobs. We didn't have proof of income. I couldn't buy another house back in Jacksonville. So I'm like, man, what am I going to do? So literally we agreed. We're like, hey, we're upset right now. We're angry right now. We feel betrayed even a little bit. We don't want to make a decision when we're like that. Let's take 30 days and figure this out. And I kept thinking, like, what am I going to do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I'm like, wait a minute, I had fun doing real estate part-time. And I'm like, man, if I did this full-time, and my wife went to school for design, and she loves staging properties, and she's great. And I just like looked at her, we had a conversation, and Devin, within like a week after that, I'd already bought my first house. Like we were off to the races, and that's where we went full-time in it. So we've probably been in it 7 years now. And I mean, we're full-time, we're flipping, 40, 50 houses a year, 18, 20 at a time. And loving every minute of it.
No, that's awesome. So That's a cool journey. Well, there is so many more things that'd be fun to dive in on, but we are reaching towards the end of the podcast. So I always ask 2 questions at the end. So maybe we'll take a second and go there. So first question I always ask is, so what was the worst business decision you ever made?
Working for somebody else. Like I've learned never to allow someone else to control my destiny. That just sticks in my brain. When somebody can come in and take your salary away from you at any time, your retirement. I see people, they retire at 30 years and at year 29, we're downsizing. Like to me, when I work for somebody else, I don't control my own destiny. I'm not able to dream as big as I want because I'm working for somebody. I'm working at their dream and for their goals. So I think that was probably my worst decision, because I know my best decision was when I said, I'm going to go do it for myself. And there's no cap. There's no level. There's no ceiling. I can go wherever I want.
No, that's interesting. So, and I think that is probably one of the common notes of either I wish I'd got started sooner, or I wish I jumped in earlier. And I think that's a common. I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of get that same point as you get a chance to look back and say, what was the biggest mistake I made? All right. Second question I always ask is, so now you're talking to someone that's just getting into startups, just getting into small businesses. What would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'm big on next steps. Like, take a step. There's something out there that they need to go to the next level. I was thinking about it this morning while I'm driving in my truck. It's dark out still, and some people are laying in bed. Some people are being lazy. Some people aren't giving it 100%. And for me, it's always everybody I see that wants to do what I do or wants to do what you do. Like, they have to take the very first step, and then it has to just continue every day. If you're taking a step every day towards what you want, and it has to be what you want. Your why has to be so big that you get up at 5 a.m. and you work till 11 o'clock at night because you're hungry, you want it, you know why you're doing it, and you just got to take that step every day.
No, I think that's, taking that next step, figuring out what the next step is and taking it and not waiting or delaying is a major part of being a successful entrepreneur.
Definitely.
So now as we wrap up, so people want to, whether it's learn more about flipping houses, learn all of your, or hear more of your stories about being a state trooper, anything in between, or any other reason to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect up with you?
Just go check out our website at Flippin, Flippin. There's no G on it. Flippin Experts. And they can follow us on social media. They can check out real estate. We do motivational stuff. We give away free training. Any way we can help them, they can get a hold of us through any of those means, and we're happy to serve them.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to take advantage of all the free resources you provide, the trainings, the mentorship, and all the information, and or just pick your brain if they're wanting to get into real estate or anything else. Well, thank you for coming, or thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun to hear your journey.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, now that if you have a journey to tell, if you'd like to come on the podcast, feel free to go to inventivejourneyguest.com. Sign up to be a guest on the podcast. If you're a listener, make sure to click subscribe so you can hear this episode and all the new episodes. And lastly, if you ever need any help with patents or trademarks, feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law. Thanks again, Paul. I wish you the next journey or leg of your journey even better than the last.
I appreciate it, Devin. Thank you for having me.